I'm the middle sibling of 3. I have 2 brothers. They both grew up as scouts. My older brother made it to Eagle Scout. My little brother quit sometime in Boy Scouts. But for whatever reason, my parents never forced me to become a scout when I was a kid. Which is weird because I remember always being really jealous of my older brother, Marcus, when my mom would bring me along to the Pinewood Derby contests and celebrations and such. But the thing that I was always the most jealous that I missed out on were the campouts when the troops would go out into the wilderness and camp out for a whole weekend. I went along for the drive once or twice and I saw them all setting up, doing campfires and such, but being younger and also not part of the troop, I don't think I was allowed to stay. So I'd go home with my parents. Story 1. The backyard campout. My jealousy of these campouts was mainly towards my older brother because I was growing up watching him prepare for these camping trips. Before every trip, he'd be given a tent to take home and practice setting up in the backyard. Even though I was only like 7 or 8, I remember so clearly how eager I was when I hatched the idea to do a little backyard camping. Basically, we set up the tent in the backyard and sleep in it overnight. To my little mind, that was the most exciting idea ever. Also, our backyard wasn't really a traditional backyard. Our childhood house was in a very spacious neighborhood where yards just kind of all meshed together and there weren't many fences, more so large patches of trees and brush separating yards, which added to the camping feel. Our backyard was also huge and we had a fire pit, so our parents played along and set up the fire pit in our backyard for us so we could get the full camping experience. My little brother roasted marshmallows with us too. But our parents weren't going to let him sleep in the tent. He was only like 4 at the time and it wasn't a good idea. And no, he wasn't a scout yet. Obviously he was 4. After it got a little late, our parents brought him in and told us it was time to start getting ready for sleep. At this time in my life, the Game Boy Advance was the handheld console. So, after getting into our sleeping bags, Marcus and I whipped out our Game Boys and played our respective games. I was playing Pokemon Fire Red, a game I was obsessed with yet could never beat as a child. After getting a little more tired though, I turned to my side and tried to sleep. But I remember not being able to sleep. Like I was tired but restless. Maybe because I'd never slept in a sleeping bag before. And quite frankly, it wasn't comfortable. A lot of time passed, and I mean a lot, before I finally dozed off. And then I woke up probably confused about where I was at first, not recognizing my surroundings. I remember looking around the dark tent and then noticing something. Marcus was gone. His sleeping bag was empty. The tent zipper was closed though. He must have went inside because he couldn't sleep. I was suddenly too scared to be in the tent alone. So I got up and unzipped the tent. But before crawling out, I did a little innocent peek outside simply because I was too scared to run out through the backyard without checking if the coast was clear. But it was not. I saw someone sitting by the fire pit in the darkness. It wasn't Marcus. It was a grown man. He was facing the tent and surely he had to have seen me. I gasped and zipped the tent back up and crawled back into my sleeping bag as if that piece of cloth was any form of protection. I stayed completely still inside my sleeping bag. The tent was almost completely dark, just a faint gray from the moonlight coming through the fabric. I don't know what was going through my mind at that point, but I do know that I wanted to call out, "Dad," just hoping that it was my dad, but I knew it wasn't. I got a look at the man even just briefly, and if it were my dad, he'd have acknowledged me poking my head out of the tent. And that's when I heard the chair by the fire pit shift. I was bricking it, hoping the man didn't get up. And if he did, that he wasn't coming towards the tent. But I could see a shadow now on the other side of the tent, blocking some of the moonlight. He was right outside somehow. I thought if I didn't move, maybe he would think the tent was empty. Then I heard the zipper very slowly dragging downward. It only moved a few inches. The opening was small, but it was enough. I couldn't help it. I turned my head just slightly. There's a small gap at the bottom of most tents where the zipper doesn't fully seal. I had never noticed it before that night. And I was pressed against that gap. Just one eye looking directly at me. I could see the white of it in the dark. I couldn't even scream at first, not for a few seconds at least, because I was paralyzed. Then the eye squinted a bit as if the person was smiling, a smile that I couldn't see. The zipper moved another inch, and that's when I finally screamed. I scrambled backwards, kicking out of my sleeping bag, knocking into the tent poles. I heard footsteps immediately take off through the yard. Our back porch light flipped on, which I could see through the tent fabric. My dad burst out the back door yelling. I could hear him running across the grass. By the time he reached the fire pit area, whoever it was already gone. My parents called the police, of course. I don't remember what happened after my parents talked to the cops. I know I went to my parents' room with my mom and eventually the police did their thing, likely searching the immediate area. It was an absolute nightmare. I slept in my parents' bed that night. I was emotionally scarred for a while. Just as things might have been going back to normal, I think it was a few weeks to a month later, this part is what really hammers the nail in the coffin for this experience being something I can never forget. I went to Catholic school, and during lunch we'd have a short recess in the schoolyard which was all concrete. The far end of the schoolyard was fenced off and looked towards the street. We were playing some game, maybe tag or something. This part one genuinely don't remember. All I know is I had to run to the fence to be considered safe from whatever the threat in the game was. And while I was on the fence next to some other kids, mind you, a man says, "Hey," from the other side of the fence. I turn and it's a man asking me for directions to some place I don't even remember. I said, "I don't know. We weren't even supposed to talk to strangers outside of the schoolyard." Then he said, "Your name's Christopher, right?" And that moment is implanted in my brain. His voice, the look on his face, and my heart dropping. I said no, lying to him. He then smiled and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And at this point, I ran towards one of the recess chaperones and pointed over at the fence, but the man was gone. One of the kids next to me told me he saw the man too. The recess ladies called the recess in short, and the school called my parents. I was sure it was that man from the backyard. I was taken home early that day. I know my parents were so sick and worried after this. It was a hellish month. We lived in such a nice area too. And to almost be chased out of the neighborhood because of this was just a nightmare. After months of me being under tight supervision from my parents, things went back to normal. I can't express enough though how much it still pains me in my chest thinking about how I could be dead today if that man had somehow successfully taken me. And it makes me sick wondering if he was ever successful in whatever he was trying to do with someone else. Story 2, the Facebook Marketplace Trap. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, a quaint little city. I moved out when I was 23, buying my first house about 40 miles out from Portland. I furnished my first house with a mix of stuff from my parents, their friends, and a bunch of stuff off online marketplaces and apps. I was driving a Chevy Silverado at the time, so lugging stuff around was thankfully very easy. On Facebook Marketplace one day I found a listing selling a bunch of good-looking stuff. The ones in the listing that caught my eye were this gray sectional couch that looked pristine and this Trek brand mountain bike. I didn't have a bike at the time, and where my house is, having one is perfect for exercise. The other stuff on the listing didn't really interest me. The listing itself was just sort of a digital yard sale. I contacted the seller and we did a little typical back and forth. He was pretty short and straight to the point with his answers and surprisingly easy to negotiate. He agreed to a slightly lower price and he said I could come pick this stuff up later that evening. Days are long in Oregon in the summer, so I'd still be showing up with some sunlight. I banked on having to do a couple trips to transport the sectional couch due to its size. I set out on my way to the house. The address was right on the coast. I checked the satellite view on the map just to confirm it was bringing me to a house, and it was. Based on the map, there was a long trail or driveway that veered off the road towards a huge open property with a big-looking house. And then in the backyard was a literal drop-off to the ocean. All I could think was, no wonder these people were selling all this stuff for so cheap. With that kind of money, I wondered why they weren't just giving it away. I headed out that way and it didn't take long to get there. I could tell the closer I got to the shore, the nicer the properties got. And then I turned onto the last road before I'd be turning onto the driveway for the house. This road was long. It was lined with woods on each side. And then I'd passed the occasional driveway leading to probably a cliffside mansion. Eventually, I made it to the turnoff. It was a tree-lined dirt road, or the driveway I guess you would call it. About 10 seconds in of driving down this driveway, it opened to this massive clearing. The driveway went on a slight incline leading to the house at the top of this hill. I pulled up next to this older sedan. It was like a Honda Accord or something. It did not match the house at all. Like, this house looked like it belonged to a millionaire. And this car was a piece of junk. I went up to the front door ready to ring the bell, but there was a yellow post-it note on the front door and it said on it, "Doorbell broken. Please use back door." Weird, because I could have just knocked, but I obeyed. As I walked down the front porch, I messaged the guy on Messenger that I arrived and was going around back. I walked around the side of the house, looking at each window as I passed, but the blinds all seemed to be closed. I got to the backyard and it was crazy. It actually overlooked the Pacific Ocean. I walked up the back deck to go knock on the back door. It was a sliding glass door, but there was some kind of sliding blind that was closed, so I couldn't see inside. I knocked on the glass. I stood there for a minute, then knocked again. I looked down at my phone to see if he answered or read my message. Neither. I went to go sit on one of the chairs on the deck and spun it around to stare at the sunset and the view of the Pacific. It was a surreal view. I kept checking my Messenger app and following up with the guy, but he wasn't answering. I triple-checked that I had the right address, and I did. Plus, the note on the front door confirmed that. I decided if he was in the shower or occupied or something, I'd at least go walk over to the cliffside and get a picture of the view. I did just that. I walked down the deck, then down the seemingly freshly cut grass to the cliffside. Taking in the view, I daydreamed about one day being able to afford a place like this. I started walking back up to the house, but stopped maybe 3 steps in when I realized every single window now had their blinds open, and there was a person standing at each window, standing as still as statues. I didn't know if what I was looking at was some kind of prank or not. I walked a little closer, and the moment I said, "Nope, I've seen enough," was when I realized every single face was smiling. I honestly couldn't tell if they were mannequins or not. That's how still they were. I decided I just needed to get to the car. I did a light jog around the side of the house again. And that side window that I mentioned that also had its blind shut before was now too lifted. And there was someone at this window as well. I didn't know what was going on here, but I had to get out. As I got to the front, I got back in my car. And I didn't even look at the front windows. I didn't even want to know if there were people at these windows too. I reversed all the way down the driveway, and regrettably, I did at one point take a curious look ahead at the house. The front door was open, and there was a person standing on the front porch with his hands in his pockets watching me drive away. It didn't matter. Everything about this was a red flag. I was out of there in a minute and down the road. The guy never opened or responded to my message still. I decided to turn into the closest neighbor's house driveway and knock on the door. They answered, and I explained the bizarre and disturbing situation I just encountered, and I pressed them about any info on their neighbor. The man who answered, who I'll call Robert, was shocked because he's close friends with the guy next door, and he said he's hardly ever in town and that he wouldn't set up some kind of elaborate prank like that. He called his neighbor on the spot, and the guy picked up. Basically, the conversation went as follows from what I remember. "Hey Michael, it's Robert next door. Listen, I got someone at my front door right now saying you invited him to your house to buy stuff, but you pulled some kind of scary prank on him with the windows and stuff." And there was a pause before Michael said, "What are you talking about?" From here, I stepped in and explained everything from the Facebook ad to my arrival there to the people at the windows. He now sounded very concerned because he said he wasn't home this week. I did my best to describe every detail, including what the man on the front porch looked like as well as the sketchy car. He asked me to take his number so he could contact me after the police investigated. After that, I left. I went home. I really didn't have it in me to commit 2 hours to some police investigation that didn't concern me, truth be told. But I did hear from the guy later that night. He called me and asked me to send him the Facebook listing, but it was removed. I did send him the details of the profile that I was messaging on the Messenger app, but it was now a blank profile. He thanked me for that and would give it to the police anyway. When I asked him what the cops found, he told me they found nothing stolen as far as he knew at that time, and that all the blinds were once again closed and there was no sedan in the driveway, but that all 3 doors in the house were unlocked. Now, the scary part for me is the way they were all standing at the window, smiling, trying to scare me. And I have to wonder what use was I going to be of to them, and why did they want me in the backyard? Scary thoughts, honestly. I'm just glad I left when I did. Story 3. The Pool Party Intruder. I live with my parents in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My parents were gone one weekend, so I decided I was going to have a bunch of people over in the backyard for a mini pool party. We have a pool house and an in-ground pool back there. It's perfect for parties, even though I rarely get a chance to throw anything. The rest of the backyard is a little bit of grass and then the woods behind the pool house. It's a very private backyard. Usually. You'll see what I mean soon. So, the little party I planned was for Saturday night. Earlier that day I was setting up outside. It was a little cloudy out, but since it was going to be a night party, that didn't really matter. The woods behind the pool house are pretty big. They go at least half a mile back before they reach another backyard. So, there should really be no one walking through them. It's also our property. There are no trails or any reason for anyone to be back there. I was bringing out folding tables for beer pong and refreshments and setting them up when I heard a cough come from the woods. It was clearly a slow throat clearing kind of cough, like someone trying to get something out of their throat, and it was definitely a man. I froze with the table still in my hands. I just stood there listening. The wind was barely moving the leaves, so the sound carried really clearly. It came from just inside the tree line, not deep in the woods. Close enough that whoever made it could definitely see me. I slowly set the table down and looked out toward the trees. Confused is one word to use, but unsettled would be a better one. No one should be in those woods ever. I scanned the tree line and called out, "Who is that?" There was no answer. Not even any movement. No footsteps or branches snapping or anything. That almost made it worse. If it was some random guy walking through, I should have heard him moving away, but it was just quiet. I got that feeling in my chest like I was being watched, like someone was standing perfectly still just behind a tree staring at me. I stood there for maybe 20 seconds just listening. The longer I stood there, the more uncomfortable I felt. Eventually, I just grabbed the rest of the stuff and brought it back inside for a bit. I didn't want to just stand out there alone anymore. I called my good friend Tyler to come over early and help me set up. I decided not to mention the cough. I didn't want to sound paranoid before the party even started. Tyler came over around 6 p.m. He brought some drinks and helped me finish setting up. I kept glancing at the woods while we were out there, but everything looked normal. Nothing moved. If someone had been there earlier, they were gone. The rest of my friends started showing up around 7 to 8. At the peak of the party, there were at least 25 people. Nothing insane, but it was a good time. There was music playing, people in the pool, lights around the patio on. With that many people there, the woods didn't feel creepy anymore. A couple times during the night, I caught myself looking toward the tree line though. I don't even know why. I guess that cough just stuck with me. Things started dying down around midnight, and by 1 a.m. the last of the guests had left. I figured I would leave the mess to clean up for tomorrow. I was tired and ready for bed. Before going inside, I did one last slow sweep of the backyard. I walked around the pool, checked behind the pool house, looked toward the woods again. Everything seemed normal. The water in the pool was still, the lights reflected off of it. No one was out there. I locked the back sliding door and went upstairs to brush my teeth and go to bed. I was in bed scrolling on my phone for maybe half an hour before putting it down. It probably took another half hour of laying there trying to sleep when I heard a splash. Not a small one, not like something falling in. It sounded exactly like someone jumping into the deep end. My eyes opened immediately. I held still, listening. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of someone swimming. Literal strokes through the water. My first thought was maybe someone from the party stayed behind as a joke or they just passed out drunk somewhere. But I knew everyone who came. No one would do something like that. I checked my phone and it was 2:15 a.m. I got out of bed and walked slowly to the window that overlooks the backyard. I didn't turn on any lights in my room. I didn't want whoever was out there to see me before I saw them. When I looked down at the pool, I saw there was a guy swimming calmly from one end to the other. At first, I tried to recognize him. I knew all 25 or so people who came over. This wasn't any of them. I leaned closer to the glass. The pool lights lit up his face just enough for me to know for sure. I had never seen him before. I yelled out the window, "Who is that?" The swimming stopped immediately. He looked up slowly toward my window. Even from that distance, I could tell he wasn't confused or startled. He just stared up at me. Then he started moving toward the shallow end. He climbed out of the pool, and that's when I saw how tall he was. He stood there dripping wet for maybe 2 seconds, just looking toward the house. I expected him to run away. Instead, he started walking toward the sliding door, not running or hesitating, just walking fast and direct like he already knew where he was going, almost in a march. I yelled again, "Hey, who is that?" He didn't respond. I heard the sliding door downstairs open. I know I locked it. I'm positive I did, but I heard it slide open. Then it slid shut. I ran to my bedroom door and locked it. That's when I noticed how much my hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and texted Tyler asking him if he noticed anyone stay behind before leaving, but I didn't wait for a response. I immediately called 911. I whispered into the phone that there was an intruder in my house. I gave my address as quietly as I could. Then I heard the footsteps. They were slow, wet footsteps on hardwood. I could hear the slight stick of his feet lifting off the floor. He wasn't rushing, nor was he searching randomly. He was walking directly toward the stairs. Each step on the stairs creaked one at a time. He reached the top. The hallway floor outside my room creaked. He stopped right outside my bedroom door. I could hear water dripping onto the floor. Then the handle moved. He tried opening it once, then twice, then a third time, harder each time. When he realized it was locked, there was a long pause. The 911 operator was saying something, but I had the phone set down. I could barely focus on what she was saying. Then the guy knocked on the door. 3 slow knocks. I picked up the phone and put it on speaker. My voice was shaking, but I said loudly that I was on the phone with the police and they were on their way. There was another long pause. Then a man's voice from the other side of the door said very low and calm, "It's me. Open the door." He sounded like a grown man in his 30s. I said, "I know that I don't know you. Leave now." There was silence again. 5 seconds, maybe more. Then I heard him turn and walk away quickly. I heard his wet footsteps go back down the hallway, then down the stairs, and a few seconds later, I heard the front door downstairs open and slam shut. I didn't move until the police arrived. When I finally went downstairs with them, there was a clear trail of water leading from the back door up the stairs all the way to the bedroom door. After searching the entire house, that was the only proof that he had ever been there. I texted everyone I invited asking if they stayed behind or noticed anyone else stay behind. Anyone who was still awake said no. The rest texted back in the morning saying no. It was a complete stranger. And I have a feeling that cough I heard in the woods earlier that day was that man. I don't know how he got the door unlocked. Maybe he slipped in during the party when people were going in and out. As for a motive, I have no idea. I just know that if I didn't wake up when I did or if I opened that bedroom door, I don't know what he would have done.